What if I told you the reason Manchester City have been underperforming this season is because of their 6'4" goal-scoring machine? He scores goals, tons of them, and already has 2 golden boots in 2 seasons for Manchester City in the Premier League. But behind all of this, guys, a fact that prove Erling Haaland makes Manchester City worse with him in the side. And wait till you see the one that even Pep Guardiola had to admit. When City signed Haaland in the summer of 2022, it was the stuff of dreams. They unveiled their new beast to the Premier League, and straight away, with that weird-looking man bun, Donald Duck with smooth hair wasted no time in making his mark in the Premier League. Halfway into the 2022-23 season, and he'd already bagged over 4 hat-tricks, including one in the league versus Manchester United in his first Manchester derby. But even at that point, the warning signs were already there.
But is there still a case that certain players, that when Erling makes that run, they need to learn play that pass straight away?
We have done it. So how many goals has scored Erling so far?
27.
Yeah, we have done it. You have to do it more often, but not just him.
This should be good. See guys, by talking about doing it here, Pep Guardiola was referring to Manchester City's ability to adapt to Erling Haaland. You could also see him in the clip saying he wanted his players to do it more often, play the pass quicker to Haaland and play the balls in behind when he makes the runs. That Pep Guardiola was admitting to his team by doing it by asking the number of goals Haaland had scored at that point meant this was true. City had to adapt to a player like Haaland because he's different from anything they've had in the past. So at first glance, the next question would be, what is the problem with this? Well, adapting to Haaland goes against Pep Guardiola's philosophy.
To be active, don't wait what they do, the opponents, we decide what we want to do in our game. That is the main thing. And to do that, you have to have the ball. So you have to play with the ball. That I think is one of the keys of our game. So all our training sessions with the ball, all we want to want is play and play and play and play.
You listen to Pep talk about his philosophy here, and it's easy to understand what it is. He wants his players on the ball as much as possible and never wants them to hide from it. I mean, the man legit once had that infamous meltdown simply because he felt some of his players were hiding from the ball. Pep's ideas goes around ball retention and quick passing. So now we know what that is, how does Haaland fit into that? I mean, you can hear the guy. His dream is to touch the ball 5 times and score 5 times.
My dream is to touch the ball 5 times and score 5 goals. That's my biggest dream.
This is proof that Haaland is the typical Manchester City player. Take for example the likes of Phil Foden, composed on the ball and the ability to play in tight spaces. Erling Haaland, he looks like a polar bear on roller skates out there. Compare this with Pep's philosophy of always wanting his players on the ball, and already we've got a situation. The situation soon turned into a problem. The 2022-23 season was special for Haaland and Manchester City. City won the treble and Haaland won the Golden Boot in both the Premier League and the Champions League. But again, in the context of what Pep's philosophy is, Haaland was miles off. He averaged 26.9 touches per 90 in the 2022-23 season, the lowest in Manchester City's squad by a margin. Again, for context, the dude in the same position the season before Haaland arrived, Gabriel Jesus, averaged 53.9 touches per 90 in the 2021-22 season. Remember when I said the warning signs already started to show with City for Haaland halfway through his first campaign? Well, by the end of it, they were full on. The collective numbers in various categories had dropped. For instance, the number of take-ons from players out wide dropped from 19.5 to 16.9%, while the number of crosses from the same position increased from 16 per 90 to 21.5 per 90. Now it's time to look at Haaland and Manchester City in the present day to understand the damage the Norwegian causes to City. It's clear now that unless a miracle happens, Manchester City will not be winning the league this season.
And only can happen to be worse, they're not going to win, right? So maybe after 7 years winning 6 Premier Leagues, maybe 1 year is, another team deserves it. But
even Pep has given up on the idea of winning the league. A lot of City's problems this season have been down to the fact that they've not been as clinical as they would have been in past seasons. Take the Premier League as an instance. Haaland is City's top scorer with 19 goals in the league this season. But let's look at the guys in second place. Phil Foden with 7, and Foden only really picked up his form at the start of the year, went through a horrible first half of the season with no goals. In third, Joško Gvardiol. Joško Gvardiol is a left-sided centre-back. If you progress even further, then the numbers start to show. The names you would expect have decent numbers. The likes of Jeremy Doku, Jack Grealish, Kevin De Bruyne, Bernardo Silva, and Ilkay Gundogan. These 5 players combined have 8 league goals this season. That's not even half the number of goals Haaland has this campaign. To be fair to Haaland, this isn't exactly his fault. The fact that his teammates can't produce better numbers. But again, part of the reason for this is down to City's decision to sign him back in 2022. Sounds crazy, but it is. Amongst other things, it's easy to believe now that part of the reason Manchester City was willing to sell Raheem Sterling to Chelsea was because of Haaland. Sterling was no fluke at City with 131 goals and 74 assists in 339 games across 7 seasons. Ranked third with players having the most goals as well as assists for Pep. And they sold him. Listen to Sterling talk in the earlier interview, and the reason he cited was because he'd been informed that he wasn't going to be a regular starter. All of this is building up to something, and we'll get onto what that is in a couple of seconds, but first, hit that subscribe button to Mr. Football if you haven't yet for more videos like this. The problem here is that Haaland's arrival was set to rejig the team. Part of the reason Raheem Sterling was able to play 47 games in his final season for City was because Pep could use Phil Foden in that false 9 position and Sterling out wide. However, with Haaland's arrival, all of that changed. A lot of Sterling's goals at City were late, unmarked arrivals in the box where he was unmarked. He was usually on the end of chances rather than creating them himself. But with Haaland's arrival and players like Foden and Grealish outside who could create, City and Pep suddenly didn't need him. The reason we've highlighted Raheem Sterling here is because Sterling was a chief goal threat for City. Since he joined the club, he hit double digits in terms of goals in every season he was at City. To lose that for a central goal threat, City haven't quite had a replacement out wide ever since. There have been more departures too. Riyad Mahrez, even Ilkay Gundogan, who left and came back, has been a shadow of what he previously was at City. And a big part of Gundogan's game was his ability to pop up with big goals in big games. It isn't there anymore. It was easier when they had this guy around. Julian Alvarez, a guy who could play in multiple positions across the pitch and, more importantly, could come up with big moments for City as well. Julian Alvarez made it clear why he left City. No matter how well he played, he wasn't going to get as many minutes. And the reason for this was because having Erling Haaland in the team, with the amount of goals he scored, was too much for Pep to resist. With all that's been said so far, there's to finally understand if Haaland makes this City team bad or not. We've got to ask that question. Would City have won the treble, the club's biggest achievement to date, without Haaland? City won the treble, but how much of it was down to Haaland then? Take the Premier League for example, 89 points in the 22-23 season, 94 goals scored. In the 2021-22 season, 93 points, 99 goals scored. If we go further, you'll realise that in the 6 of the 7 Premier League seasons, City has won the league up to 22-23 when they did the treble. Their tally from 22-23 is the second lowest under Pep. Haaland had a record-breaking season for goals that year. On the aspect of the Premier League, if we're stating facts, the transfer worked more for Haaland than it did for City. They didn't necessarily need Haaland to win the league. They'd won it 4 out of 5 seasons before he arrived. The next argument was that Haaland was brought in to win the Champions League for City, and to this end he scored 12 goals in 11 Champions League games. But was he the key man? Let's break down his numbers a bit. In his first 3 games of that Champions League season, he scored in all 3, notched up 5 goals, then blanked for the next 4 games before scoring 5 against RB Leipzig in the round of 16 second leg, and scored home and away versus Bayern Munich. So what's the point here? Again, if we're stating facts, this is a City side before Haaland's arrival that got knocked out in the semi-finals and lost in the final in the last 2 seasons. They didn't need Haaland to get into the quarter-finals, or past it. They'd done it before. It was in the big games, the likes of Real Madrid, that they brought Haaland for, and well, he blanked.
Yeah, but he doesn't. He's not in the team. He's not in the team for that. He's brought in a team to run him behind. What they're saying is totally right. But the thing is, from my point of view, he's got to be aggressive. You see them, Saliba bullying him. You've seen the size of him. I've seen him, I think it was Dunk a couple of seasons ago, barge him off the ball, really use his strength. But he's not even doing that. That is my concern. I don't expect Haaland to be delicate and do one touch and two touch passing, because that's not his game. They brought in Mamouche, sort of played off each other today. He will be more delicate, but I expect him to use his frame more. That, as a defender, he's making it too easy for me at this moment in time. If you go really tight, he loses the ball.
This season has been a continuation of the theme, except now it's getting worse. City no longer have that unpredictability about them. It's easy to understand what Pep's ultimate game plan is from the attacking sense. The ball will come into Erling Haaland eventually, and if teams can find ways to keep him quiet in games, then they've taken out City's main goal threat. In reality, guys, it's harsh to overlook what Haaland has managed to achieve with this City team. I mean, yeah, it's easy to say anyone could come into the lineup and score goals, but then again, it's worth remembering City has had strikers in the past who haven't matched up to the numbers he's put up. The truth is, even though it's been 3 years since he arrived now, Manchester City is still adapting to Erling Haaland and playing with a presence like him up top. He's had to change his ideas and his play style to continue to get the best out of Haaland. But while Haaland is scoring goals, City as a team, particularly this season, has regressed. Wonder what would have happened if instead of Haaland, City had gone for the other transfer target instead. Maybe if they'd signed Harry Kane, he would have broken the curse that's been following his career all through. Click the next video to find out if Harry Kane is the most unluckiest player ever.